Let's do it.
So I wanted to welcome everyone to MCCEI's Pride in Construction webinar. I'm Jennifer Sproul, president of MCCEI. We are thrilled to have you join us today as we celebrate diversity, inclusion, and progress within the construction industry. In recent years, there have been increasing recognition of the importance of creating safe spaces for individuals to express their true selves, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And this holds true in all industries, including construction. And while the construction industry may not traditionally be associated with LGBTQ plus inclusion, it is crucial that we acknowledge the unique challenges faced by these individuals within this field. Many LGBTQ professionals in construction have often felt isolated or marginalized, unable to bring their authentic selves to workplace due to fear of discrimination and prejudice. And this webinar aims to address these challenges by providing a platform for open dialogue, education, and support. We believe that fostering a safe and inclusive environment within the construction industry is not only the right thing to do, but is also beneficial for companies and employees alike. Companies that prioritize LGBTQ plus inclusion and provide safe spaces create a culture of acceptance and belonging. This in turn leads to improved employee morale, increased productivity, and enhanced teamwork. When employees feel valued and respected for who they are, they can bring their whole selves to work, leading to greater innovation and success. During this webinar, we'll explore various topics such as LGBTQ workplace policies, the importance of allyship, strategies for creating an inclusive work environment, and personal stories from LGBTQ professionals in construction who have overcome challenges and achieved success. We have a great lineup of speakers today who are going to introduce themselves in a moment. We ask that you type any questions in the chat and we'll answer them at the end of our prepared questions. So let us come together as a community to celebrate our diversity and pave the way for more inclusion, for a more inclusive future in the construction industry. Thank you for joining us again today, and we hope that this webinar will inspire you to make a positive impact within your workplace and beyond, and together we can build a more inclusive and accepting industry for all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma and our panelists.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jen. So my name is Emma. I am the moderator today, and I was so excited when we as MCCEI, the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation, decided to really put an emphasis on queer inclusion, LGBT inclusion, but specifically how to be safe, out, and successful in the industry, right? Because including is only so much. And so there's really a point where we have to start thinking about what is more and how can folks like us flourish here and beyond, right? So excited that our state is focusing on this specifically through MCCEI, and I'm really eager to introduce you to these panelists. So we will get started. Jason, could you introduce yourself, pronoun, name, and where you come from?
Yes, Jason Williams, he, him, his, from Baltimore, Maryland, CEO of Mason-Dixon Companies.
Erica.
I'm Erica Fry, she, her, and Regional Safety Director for Rosendon Electric.
Awesome, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Gorham, him, his, and I work in the planning services division of Rosendon now. Originally from Bethesda, Maryland, and live in South Carolina now.
Nice. And Danny.
Danny Donovan, she, her. We own Donovan Waterworks, a Baltimore County-based plumbing company serving the greater Baltimore area.
Awesome. All righty. So tell me a little bit about how each of you sort of got into the construction industry, and then if at all, in what point in your career, if at all, you felt comfortable sharing your sexuality with your colleagues. What was the scariest or most surprising part? Jason, I want to start with you.
Okay, actually, so Mason-Dixon, we do real estate development, construction management, and some consulting work on diversity, inclusion, and community impact. And actually, I kind of fell into the construction industry. I was developing a house in Baltimore, and it's something that you run into. Two gay guys developing a house. We hire a construction company, kind of get worked over because like we didn't know the process as well as they did. Hired another construction company. The guy got sick. So finally I went and got my home builder's license and finished the house myself. And suddenly I had a construction company. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to hold the licenses. And from that, the company kind of grew from there. It's interesting. So Matt, who couldn't be on, he's not only my partner in business, but he's also my partner in life. When it's hard for both of us as CEO and president of the company to like take time away. So he's handling an issue. But one interesting situation, we really didn't talk about our sexuality. Like our friends knew, like we posted stuff on social media when we were together. We were open, but we just didn't talk about it professionally. So much so that we were hiring a new person onto the construction side of our company. And I'm sitting at my desk, he's sitting across, we're talking about like getting processed and getting started. Matt walks in and says, "Hey, I need you to sign these things." I sign them and he says, "Oh, by the way, we got to get out of here soon. Like we got dinner at my family's place." And his response was, "It's such a cool, like that this is such a family oriented company that you guys go and you hang out together after work." And it was just kind of never dawned on him. And I was just like, yeah, no, it's really important. And did you like read the website? We're also like together. And he's like, "That is so cool. Oh, that's like shocking. Like you guys are doing like such great things. That's amazing." I was like, "Well, what did you expect him to come in here and sit on my lap and have me sign it?" And he laughed. He got a little embarrassed. But, it kind of made me really think about the fact that it's just kind of sometimes unspoken. So we've been more active, more like kind of direct about like who we are. We actually registered our business as an LGBTQ firm. We have it prominently on our website. We have our families like joint stories, and then just why Mason-Dixon, Matt, Jason, Mason. The Mason-Dixon line was drawn to separate. We decided to create a company that brought people together. So that's our story. You're on mute, the favorite thing of the world these days.
That's so funny because I found myself laughing and was like, I should probably mute myself so that I don't laugh out loud online. So Danny, if at all, at what point in your career did you feel comfortable sharing to your colleagues, and how did you get into the construction industry?
So my story's a little bit different. I was born and raised in California, where anybody can be anyone. And college just really wasn't for me. I did a year in college and my mom was like, "Hey, why are you doing this? If this isn't something you're interested in, have you ever considered the trades?" And so I got lucky and I found a company in California that was willing to hire me with no experience. But I really quickly learned that California was not known for its trade schools. So I moved to Arizona, which was a culture shock. Not okay to be gay in Arizona, at least in 2002-ish. I did go through a lot of heartache in Arizona. I can't hide being gay very easily, so pretty much everyone knew. But the issues I had in Arizona were things like being ganged up on. We were doing new construction. We have containers where we keep all of our equipment. At one point, I got cornered in there by a group of guys harassing me, touching themselves inappropriately. Luckily, I had some allies out there, but it was really, really difficult in Arizona to be a gay person, especially a female gay person in the trades. What I did what any lesbian would do, and I got better at my job than everyone else and became foreman. So that's how I overcame that. And now here in Maryland, we've kind of done exactly what you did, Jason. We've really embraced, hey, we are a gay-owned and operated company. It's our policy that it's zero tolerance for anything anti-LGBT. We're registered with the Chamber of Commerce, and we find that people are really accepting of us just being open with who we are.
That's awesome. So what do you recommend that leadership does to make LGBT individuals feel safe, supported, and successful from like a leadership standpoint?
I'll take this one first. I think one of the biggest steps that they can take is educating themselves before they try to go out there to steer, the people or company in any type of direction. You really need to know what exactly it is, whether you're an advocate or you're a part of the community that you're supporting. Understanding that, as an advocate, just because somebody falls in a letter in the community doesn't mean they understand what everybody else feels. Me being a lesbian, I do not understand how a transgender thinks and feels. So I think it's, really honing in on the education piece and really believing in the mission that you're working for.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that's important too, especially to think about how overarching queerness or LGBTQ plus is, and recognizing that each individual within that sort of umbrella has their own experiences, let alone within each kind of letter of that. So is there any other leadership tips that all of you are leaders in the industry in some capacity? So I would love to just hear maybe stories about your leadership experience, or how you choose to be a better leader because of or to folks who are LGBT.
I'd like to step in real quick right here, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Because of the experience I had, I'm really, really into making sure everyone feels included. Some of the things that we do over here at Donovan Waterworks is we do something simple like putting the pride flag on our website. So as either a customer or a tradesperson, you can see that you're safe here in this environment. And really just doing things like recognizing Pride Month, put it up on your social media, even if you're not a gay owned and operated company, just show people that you are inclusive and that we support you.
So visibility, education. Jason, what do you think?
Well, I see Chris jumped on, and I'll jump after Chris.
Yeah, I think I wanted to highlight, policies and procedures and statements on company informational portals is one thing, but like you were just mentioning, having a visible presence where it's not just like, oh, we cater to this, but it's like co-equal with other things that people are interested in, and having the ability to have like a team building environment in something that you're identify as is pretty important. I think there's a lot of other things that go on top of like identity is, the learning styles and development or disabilities of different types. They're not easy to understand either. And so all these different various types of communication challenges need to be overcome by like bringing visibility to any of those types of issues.
Yeah, Chris. Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on Chris, like the not just visibility, but your words matter. The question about be feeling comfortable. I mean, I worked throughout my career. I didn't really think about how much I actually worked in construction to end up back in construction. It was like my first job to pay. I was a laborer putting in windows in the State House. And you heard what people said, on the site, and you just kind of like, all right, I can't be myself here. I don't even feel comfortable at this point. It was later I was working with construction unions, and you would hear the same type of like comments and things like that. But something that happened in that respect, one of my like bosses found out through someone else that I was gay and reached out to me. And the way the conversation went, he apologized first. He's like, first of all, you couldn't be your whole self while I don't think you felt so you could be your whole self while working for me. I feel terrible because you were like one of the best people like that. We were great working together, and I believe in you, and you've called on me for things. So let me apologize there. And then because I am sure throughout my career and throughout my time, I just said things I just didn't think about how they made you feel. And I was like, wow, this big burly dude is having this heartfelt conversation with me. But I actually like appreciated this conversation, and then like the others started coming up and saying, hey, we just want to make sure we are just idiots sometimes, and we just say things, but we want to make sure you're supported. That was a interesting turning point, and that was like early on in my when I had just started the company. So it only made me like almost like Danny, you were talking about it, like it made me embrace it more, saying, oh wow, well, I should stop kind of pushing it aside. I mean, I even talked to Matt about it. I was like, if you looked at our original website, LGBTQ anything was nowhere on the website. We were partners in business, like friends since college, and then we changed that in 2018, I believe 2018. Like it was just a couple years after being in business, and just decided to embrace it. So it's just creating that, you said safe space earlier, Emma, where people feel like these conversations can happen. And too often, I mean, I walked into a construction site and they were saying some things I was unhappy about, and I sent everyone home. And I sent everyone home. I said, because no one took the time to correct it. What if someone felt like, I was like, I want you guys to think about what I walked in hearing. And, of course I got apologies from everyone, but the damage was done. But I wanted to make them think about what happened. So sometimes you just got to be direct about it. Not everyone will do it.
Right. And those safe spaces, that's, I think, really key for all. I mean, it helps your whole company, right? When there is room for these conversations, like what Chris said, folks who are outside of the LGBTQ community, maybe disabled folks or people with other needs or thoughts, right? They are all in a safer space too. So it actually, by including the queer community, you're also including all other types of individuals, which I think is really useful as well, right? To engage for your firm way beyond just one small, like, Pride Month, right, thing. It is actually so much bigger than that. And so I think that's a really special note. So Erica, when you lead a team, is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. How did you get into the construction industry? Because I definitely don't want to lose either your intro to construction or Chris's, but I also want to hear how you as a leader have kind of helped people engage in their own sexuality or feel safe in your leadership.
Sure. So I am a veteran. I was in the Corps of Engineers with the Army. So obviously that's, in the construction industry. Got out. I'm divorced from a female, so got out, dealing with some of the biggest hardships I've ever had to deal with. So, unemployed, out of the military, benefits all stopped. So I really had to figure out how I was going to turn my life around, which is when I moved up here back north, with my best friend, got in with Rosendin. And it wasn't until I would say my first stand down I did in front of the entire job site. At that time, me and my girlfriend, now 5 years, just started dating, and I was telling a story about how her dad was moving a ladder in their basement, and the tip of the ladder hit a light bulb and it sparked a fire in their basement. They ended up losing their whole house. So I was telling that story, and about 20 minutes after the stand down, this gentleman, like 6'4", the jean bibs, t-shirt, high vis, came up to me and said, number one, I am shocked that you're a lesbian. He's like, I did not expect that at all, which when you look at me, I don't understand how you see that, but that's neither here nor there. And he goes, I want you to know, I appreciate you sharing your story because I'm gay. I'm not out. I was shocked because I never would have expected, that coming from him, especially in the construction industry, male dominated profession. And we just got to talking, and it wasn't until a couple months later I was asked by someone in the training department to start Rosendin's LGBTQ plus employee resource group. So that was about 2-3 years ago. We started with that, and just that one story that I shared to get somebody to open up to me, to feel like they have somebody that they can come to and be out in some form or fashion at their place of work, really kind of gave me the kick in the ass to start that fight. And if I'm willing to be vulnerable enough to share stories about my personal experience, just so other people can relate in some form or fashion to feel safe, at their place of employment, or, any time of the day, contact me. That's really how I got started, especially with Rosendin, and, really just being an advocate for our community.
Yeah, I think the vulnerability piece there is one that non-LGBT leaders can really take away from this conversation, is the more that folks are telling their own story, right? A CEO is telling their story of a struggle that they've been through or a personal thing that they're handling, that sort of trickles down and creates a more inclusive space, right? Because so much of this conversation is about visibility, and it's about being your true vulnerable self. And it starts from leadership, because if you aren't comfortable as a leader to acknowledge your own struggles or your own challenges or your own just like lived experience, then how can we ever expect our employees to feel safe and comfortable sharing theirs in whatever capacity that looks like? And I think that that's really special. You don't have to be gay to be vulnerable. And so I think that is really a really neat thing to take in. Awesome. Does anyone else have anything that as a leader they would like to talk about?
Emma, you said something about vulnerability. I think that's important, being willing to have, you don't have to be gay to be vulnerable. I've noticed that the more kind of not just open about that, but open about like things I'm dealing with as a leader, it actually draws people in. It draws out comparisons like, that we're more and more alike than people sometimes like want to admit. That, you know, even with my successes, there comes failures. I get up the same way. I put my pants on the same way. Trying to draw some comparisons, but also, you know, draw that, yeah, I'm proud that of who I am, and I'm excited, and therefore others. And actually, I had a colleague reach out to me, and he was like, "Pretty sure my son's gay. I think he doesn't want to tell me, and I don't know how to go about addressing this." And I was like, "Cool. Let me walk you through just what I went through in this process. So you, and don't force it. Do like, so it actually caused more conversations, because people were like, he's comfortable with himself, or hey, would you mentor? Because like like my young adult, or like he's always with he's he or she, or they're feeling uncomfortable in their skin, like we like told us, but they don't feel like telling the world, but they don't feel like they have anyone to turn to other than us. You know, sometimes you actually become, by being more willing to have the conversation, a safe space for others, where people can just pick up the phone and say, hey, like, this is what happened, this is what I'm going through. We have to think about that we all need that. We all are vulnerable at some point, and we should be, as leaders, like people on this call, people that decided to join in, thinking about how to create those spaces for people to be able to come and talk to you, and truly listen to them and what they're going through. Don't try to compare your experience to theirs, because every experience is different. But figure out a path to like ensure that they know that someone's there, that there's help. So just some thoughts that I've always had, and things that I wish, now looking back, I had done differently as I was figuring out myself. Like, I could have been a better leader.
Do you have ways that creating kind of an open door policy can happen? Like, is there a good way to step into that? Anyone?
To be honest, forums like this, letting people know that, like, hey, you can come talk to us. Like, you know, I do kind of have an open door policy, for better or worse, which is probably why sometimes I work elsewhere than my office. I'll actually go work out of a field office just to get some quiet. But no, just being approachable, like being willing to talk about things. I'm pretty open about what, like, things that you're going through, like things that people are, that connect. I mean, crap, I ended up having a conversation with someone that I was wondering if they'd ever open up, because I lost my dog a few weeks ago, and he lost his dog a few weeks ago. It's like one of our most quiet employees. I say that to say that there's things that are more alike, and you could give people that opportunity. And I was like, hey, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going through the same thing. And then we actually started talking about other stuff. Like, that was, you know, like kids and things like that. We're all very, very much so like in need of someone just to listen and look out for each other. So, and I think we try to create that in our community, in the LGBTQ community, but there's other communities that just don't feel like they have that either. And sometimes feel more comfortable coming to us, I've found, to talk through things. So I'm not sure if anyone else has experienced that.
No, I definitely have as well. I think because we already start vulnerable, right? There is a level of you once you come out to a person, you've already let them know a really big chunk of your life. And so I think it sets us up to be already kind of at an advantage, right? Of people feeling secure and safe around us, ideally. Chris, did you come off mute?
Yeah, I actually have like a longer story, and there's you don't always start out vulnerable, but you know, when you go through certain life situations, you start to realize that, you know, sharing what, information about you is only there to help someone else who might be going through the same thing. I started in construction as like a 16-year-old doing ditch digging for a rough crew on like residential, like a housing community development. And so right then and there, there was like the construction workers, painters, everyone was like the same as what Jason was saying earlier. But when I got into the construction industry for like, professional career, I actually worked for a small electrical company after kind of leaving college prematurely. And I went from the construction side back to engineering, and then back and forth between those two sides of the same, fence several times. But one of the most difficult things that I went through is like I had joined like a Truland Electric out of Virginia, and then my boss ended up working for another person, and went through a really difficult period. And if I hadn't been out before then, like it would have been really devastating. I ended up getting HIV positive. Had someone who I was able to share with because we were both gay, but I had no idea that he, also was like that. And we were able to really pull me out of like a place only because you were able to share being gay. So if I hadn't been first able to be open as a gay person, I would have never had that opportunity. And I think the one thing that someone mentioned is like being vulnerable up front is sort of true in a way, but like it's really, you have to decide to become like vulnerable and share. Like it becomes easier over time, but that's something that's, as you're entering like a new field, like as a young adult, it's not really that easy at all. So trying to guide people through that journey is pretty important.
Yeah, I think that's really special, especially to guide through your own experience, right? Because we all come to the table with individual experiences and that ability to sort of take on other stories and ways of living. And so then if we take what we've learned as leaders, as people who have been through challenges, and then own that from multiple perspectives while listening, while being vulnerable, while hearing from all different types of people, I think that's how we create a beautiful, inclusive industry. So for kind of turning the table a little bit, when we think of leadership, I now want us to think of advice that we would give to maybe a young person, an LGBT identifying person who wants to enter our industry. What advice would you have given your younger self, or what advice would you give a future individual who might help them feel more supported or safe or something like that? So does anyone have any response to that?
I have a response to that. I would say if you're interested in going into the trades, figure out what trade it is you're interested in going into and research your company that you're applying to. So you're going to be interviewing them, not the other way around. If you go onto their website and you see nothing about inclusivity, that is probably not the business for you to go work for. It's just going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. So make sure wherever you're going accepts you for who you are.
Right, especially your first role as a tradesperson, you might not be able to change the whole agenda. So you're going to be a lot happier if you enter in a space that is supportive, because when you become a leader, that's sort of when you can start to do some of that good work. Everyone's off mute, so go for it, Jason.
I was going to let Erica go first.
Oh, perfect. Erica, hit it.
Oh, just to kind of play off of something Jason said earlier is, embracing the fact that him and his partner are, co-owners of this company and embracing the whole community within their company. That is definitely advice I would give to my younger self. I grew up in a very conservative town in Pennsylvania, So the thought of being gay was not necessarily accepted when I first came out. Didn't have a father growing up, so immediately my mom jumps to the whole daddy issues thing. No, mom, it's not that. Played rugby all throughout college. She's like, it's because there's lesbians on your team. Well, maybe, mom, but at the end of the day, this is who I am. And, you know, being that there were lesbians on my team was the first time I ever met anybody who was gay. Really obviously made me come into like my true comfortable self. You know, it's important to think about that, because now when I look at Rosendin, or when I, you know, look at other companies, you want to work for a company where you see people like you. So when I fell into, you know, rugby, it's because I saw people who were my true self, and I fell into that clique. I think it's the same thing for your professional outlook. You know, just like Danny said, do your research on the company you're looking towards. And if you see people like you, it could be a good adventure.
I think one thing that I've experienced is, like, you know, you really can be surprised just how accepting people are. You've got all these preconditioned ideas about, you know, how someone looks is going to impact how they respond to you. But I think the most critical thing is, like, the more you are able to accept yourself and just act, I don't want to say normally, but just act the way you would normally do so, you're going to earn more respect from people. And the folks that don't give you that respect, they're just not, it's not really based on you. It's you know, you've got to jump into that mindset of, you know, it's just a job, you know, sure, it's got connotations, but, you know, just don't worry about it. Just do your best.
You know, just jumping in on what Chris said there. I mean, I remember when I was younger and how lonely it felt to know who I was, but also want to be accepted. My message to young people, that actually never goes away. You always want to be accepted. You always want to be in the room. You always want to be invited. It's just you got to start to come up with a plan to, like, you know, like, focus on yourself. God, there's a song about like being able to hang out with yourself like recently, and I love it, and why I can't remember it right now, and just how, like, being yourself and being okay with you, and then you can kind of take over the world. I truly believe it. But that want to be like a part of the group, like, you know, I found out from a mutual friend that, and this was a while back, that's changed since, but like, there was a group of guys that they were like, well, Jason wouldn't want to go out to the bars and party with us because, you know, he's gay and there's just going to be a bunch of women around. And I was like, well, I would like to have gone out to hang out. So you left me out because you thought I would not be interested. I was like, no, I'm interested in just goofing off with you guys. We all have like mutual things. And you know what's interesting? They corrected it almost like immediately when I finally was just like, yoga, what the hell? Like, but it happens so often, like when you're like, trust me, I feel like sometimes it's just high school again. But you have to be more willing to like thoughtfully address it. You know, it's tough for us because when we raise our hand and say this is unfair, they're like, oh great, like it's now another like social issue that we now all have to be more cognizant of, and everyone needs to be invited everywhere. That's not what we're trying to say. It's more you know, being thoughtful, and then also make sure you want to be with these people, not just because they're the cool kids. Like, even to this day, it's like there's this group of like leaders that are always going to be the cool kids and you want to be near them, but like sometimes, really, do you? Like, just take a step back and think about it. Like, are these the people that you want to emulate if you don't ever feel included around them without asking to be included? So these are things that I'm 41 now. I am still dealing with them and trying to, like, you know, to like justify some of the thoughts I have in my head, like, oh, why wasn't I included on that like invite? You know, but it's something that you have to really like look at yourself and think, you know, am I cool with me? And then who are the people that I want to be around, that want to be around me? And you lean in on those people, and those are the people that have taken me the furthest in my career.
I don't know, Jason, I feel like you're one of the cool kids, because I think it's so neat that you, and I think we can all take this away, right? Leadership or young person or anyone, being able to say in a casual, non-confrontational way, like, what the hell, I think is such a skill that not everyone has, or not everyone feels comfortable using. And so, as kind of a takeaway, I feel like every single one of us, maybe one time this week or this month, should kind of turn around and say, hey, you sure that's what you meant? Because I think oftentimes, right, even Jason, you had said it, and almost all of us have said it in its own way, it's that when you have a second to, queer or not, right, a part of it or not, to step up and say, hey, I don't know that you meant that, or you sure? Or what the hell? I think all of that is so effective in starting the conversations and making it more comfortable, partially to be vulnerable to mess up, right? To be vulnerable to do the wrong thing at first, or say something that you didn't mean, and then to move forward in this kind of excellent, inclusive, and successful place where we are all out and can all say, check ourselves, check each other. And I think that that's really, really special. And so I really appreciate you all doing that here and for being here with us. I think we have a couple questions we wanted to cover. But as we wrap it up, does anyone in the panel, kind of while we pull questions, and if anyone would like to drop extra questions in, does anyone have any kind of follow-ups to bring to the table before we go into questions?
One more thing I'll add, just because I think it's important. I think I almost saw something in the chat and I think about it. Being gay and minority, sometimes that is an interesting challenge that a lot of people are going through. Like many communities, like, you know, Erica, you said you were from rural Pennsylvania, like Matt, Westminster, Maryland, like he couldn't be different from me. And his family, wow, I went through the process with him and his family, but also he got to see my fear of my African-American family, because religious, like just, they were super conservative, and I'm dating a white dude. So I was just like, this will be fun. This, like, and he bringing me to Carroll County, dating a black dude. We just went through some interesting things. I mean, some of the stories we could tell you about, like literally the first time he and I went out on a date in Westminster, it was like a phone tree. The restaurant was so packed that the owner walked up and thanked us for coming, because people came to see us, like I was on show. And then I brought him, and I was like worried, like how my uncles and were going to treat him, how they were going to treat me. They found out I was gay. They were kind of like, yeah, but they actually in the end embraced him because they love me. And of course my mom's the matriarch of the family, so she kind of put her foot down and said, if you have a problem, then it's like, but that doesn't happen for everyone. It doesn't happen at home, so it should happen at work. You need a reprieve somewhere, like, and if you're creating a reprieve at work, I think your people will work harder for you. If they don't have some of that support, especially as a young person or a person coming up or within their friends at home. So sorry, that was my.
No, absolutely. And I think a question in the chat is definitely connected to that. So we'll cover it as well. Does anyone have any final follow-up before we go into questions?
I think one of the things you kind of mentioned is like having a strong advocate in an unlikely source, like, you know, kind of counter culture to whatever the group is, you know, it's really sends a message to everybody that, you know, I'm not speaking about me, but like, you know, I'm not gay, but, you know, it's like everyone matters. And, you know, I've got people at Rosenden that I can think of that are like that all the time. And being strong, you know, even though you're not part of that group, I think is critical to this as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's part of that takeaway too, is taking that big deep breath of confidence and acknowledging that you can say, step up and say something, even though it's a community that you are not a part of, or that you only lead one person in your company, right, who is a part of that. I think it's good. Awesome. Okay, so I did want to note before we go into questions that obviously there is no trans representation on our panel, and it's not because I didn't try, it's not because we didn't try. Unsurprisingly, trans folks in the American construction industry do not feel safe to be out most of the time. So this was obviously the first step of many to make the construction industry a better place. And I did want to acknowledge that a huge part of LGBT is missing from our panel, and that in the future, hopefully we can create a space where folks do feel comfortable to share their story when it comes to transness. So that is one thing I wanted to cover. And now we'll go into questions. Jen, could you please ask our team some of those questions?
Absolutely. So I've seen 2 so far. The first question was on related to vulnerability. So are there any suggestions on how to get leadership on board that seem resistant to bringing human connection and vulnerability into work? So like Jason's great, you obviously leading from the top, right? But for those people on the call who are not in a leadership position and their bosses maybe are a little more old school, how do we get them to be more warm and fuzzy? Any thoughts?
I think this is interviewing your company before you start working there. If you have to beg somebody to be inclusive, I don't think it's the right environment for somebody LGBT.
Yeah, Danny, I think you're spot on. But also, like, sometimes it matters the size of the company. You may not know, and some companies are so big they act like fiefdoms within themselves. So it's sometimes the person you're working under that is the real, like, so, you know, if you find yourself in a situation that you feel like you're being ignored or you're like, there are ways to address it. Usually there's some type of way through your HR, or sometimes you just got to say, do the what the hell, like, hey, this is what happened. I say that now, but when I was in the situation years ago, I didn't do it. I just let it happen and then let people later apologize to me. You know, that's where I said the lack of leadership. It's harder said than done on things like that, to actually address someone who, you know, they could come up with any other reason, but they could fire you. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. They could fire you, or they can marginalize you if they decide to. It's being thoughtful, to be honest, it's being a little strategic, getting to know them, getting to know what motivates them. And that sounds unfair, but sometimes I found myself, and I actually talked about it just on the African American, just being African American, where I've had to conform to others to succeed. And I did that for so many years that I look back on it and I'm like, damn, that I am not that guy, but I was then, but I'm a different person now. I wish I could go back and talk to him, but what he did advanced him until later in life. What would have happened if you did? So I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. I'm more putting out there. It's easier said than done. You know, and it's difficult. It's just a difficult conversation. And sometimes going to someone else to help, like someone like this panel, someone like that you can trust in and say, like, how do I deal with the situation is really important. I don't know how to address the leadership. Can you help me learn the culture of this firm? How do I get there? You know, so.
Yeah, I think typically finding someone who isn't maybe at the top, right, but that can push from kind of maybe a higher level, that might be effective too, right? Find allies who are your direct management, because oftentimes the power shouldn't always come from the minority, right? So that in terms of like the work that we put in, right, the burden should not all be placed on the queer community for queer essentials. So there is something about finding allies and kind of rallying that team to hopefully lift you up, and other people in your firm. So I feel like power is in numbers in that one, and power is in all types of individuals and experiences that might be able to break a barrier or cross a barrier that maybe I'm thinking like CEO, for example, couldn't see all the way past, but maybe there are smaller steps to get them there. And that could be through allies or other folks who are in the company. So that's what I would recommend kind of on top of that as well. My first experience in the construction industry was, I didn't feel safe to be out. And so there I found a lot of kind of secret folks who I would work with to sort of try to cushion. And actually that experience is why this webinar has meant so much to me and to MCCEI is because we all deserve to be out and to soften the construction industry, make it a more vulnerable, beautiful place, and all that. So Jen, could you hit our next question, please?
Yeah, and real quick, I wanted to mention, I know I'm not a panelist, but a former employer of mine had everyone read the same book together. And we read Brené Brown and we read Sean Acor and whatever. And obviously that came from leadership, but it ties into that. At least if there's somebody that had the idea. It may not have been the president of the company that had the idea that we all read the same book together. But if we are reading about vulnerability, we're reading about the power of positivity. We're reading about things that made you think differently as a company. So we all had started to have the same mind frame. So that might be a way, like if you can just make a suggestion, like let's have a book club and you're not reading like, a romance novel or fiction. You're reading, self-help type books like that might be helpful. Okay. The next question we have is, I know we kind of sort of touched on it already. It was from Marina. I'm thinking about different groups of queer people, for example, someone who is Latinx, gay, and non-binary. What are your thoughts on the kinds of unique challenges that those people might be facing in the workplace, and what advice would you give for them so that everyone can thrive?
Be better than everyone else. I'm not kidding. I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us, but correct me if I'm wrong here, that being a gay person, just in the work field in general, you constantly have to prove yourself. I've got 25 years plumbing experience, and there are still some houses where I knock on the door and I get the up and down look, and I have to be better than anyone they've ever had before. So if you can take classes to improve your knowledge, go to these panel discussions, anything that you can do to be one step ahead.
Damn straight. That's all I can say. Being Black and gay, I feel like I always have to overperform. And I actually, and unfortunately for my team, they have to overperform too. So like I always say, I have little room for error because they'll blame something else. Like, and I need you all to understand that working for a majority-owned African-American firm, at the same time a majority-owned LGBT firm, we're going to have to outwork everyone around us. I hopefully, and when we do it, we're going to do some great things that people are going to be proud of, and we'll bring a lot of people along with us. We'll lead by example. And it's unfortunate that that is what's thrust upon all of us, but I think it's made me better. I think it's made me stronger. I think it's made me sit in rooms with executives and be like, well, that's stupid. I'm sorry, that was an inside thought. Like, and I said it anyway. And everyone paused and it's like, well, what do you think? It actually is one of the ways I ended up on a corporate board of directors, because I challenged their leadership. Didn't realize I was in an interview for a construction corporate board, but I was challenging the things that they did, how they treated, how I thought they could be better. And the leadership actually listened. And then suddenly I was like, whoa, how did I end up in this room? Okay, now that I'm in it, what are we doing to make it better? I think that's what really is. Get in the room and wedge the door like open behind you to ensure others can follow. It's the leading by kind of example thing. So, yeah.
All right, perfect.
Couple
Next
other
question. Yeah, we're getting
questions.
them in.
Yeah, so we got from Nicole. She says that as an advocate for human rights and DEI and a Black straight woman, how can I help other leaders who fear the LGBT community to lean in, recognizing my own sexuality may be questioned in the process?
So I have an initial response, okay. So my initial response is that it's okay if they question your sexuality, right? Like, it's okay. Unless they're being awful about it, and then there's other things that we need to be concerned with. But I think it's all right if we enter situations vulnerably and we bring our whole selves and people misunderstand it, right? So because we can't control the way that other people receive us and what we advocate for. And so we can only control what we say and how we show up. And so if you're proud of the way that you showed up in terms of kind of dealing with these antiquated views, stepping out of your comfort zone, and maybe pushing for the LGBTQ community, sometimes someone with an antiquated view might lump you in with that. And I don't think that that's always the worst thing. So that would be kind of my initial reaction. Does anyone else have any?
Yeah, again, I just think it's the education piece. When we first got started with the LGBTQ plus employee resource group, at the time I was also on our DEI committee with our president. And, you know, when that first got brought up, he's like, I have no problem advocating for this. He goes, I know nothing. I said, first thing you need to learn, what do the letters stand for? And he goes, right. And, you know, it's, again, just that simple educational piece, being okay to say what the acronym stands for. Each letter is a group of human beings. Again, you know, to kind of go towards the answer of this question, it's just the humankind, you know, it's human kindness. You know, it's not that it's something astronomical you're doing, or, you know, something that needs to be this huge feat, but it's just be kind to one another. You know, who I love and who's waiting for me at home has nothing to do with anybody here at my workplace, but let me be me.
I think one of the things that you could try and say is that, you know, if you bring a welcoming environment and people are able to talk about their own lives more than, you know, before, I think they're going to be happier at work. And, you know, I know if you're hiding and you're just coming to work, you might just be going through the paces. But if you're able to connect with people, everyone's going to do better together as a team. I don't think you can really quantify that, but I think there is value there.
Yeah. I also think as we're kind of talking about being open and being vulnerable, saying that you're straight is okay too. So if that's in the conversation, right, then you can say that, because all of us sat here and said, I'm gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm whatever. And so there is room for you to say that as well. Obviously.
And Emma, to that point, like it's funny, when I first came out, it was my women friends that were my greatest advocates. I found like, you know, like women have like the ability to, like, sometimes they're just like, yeah. And my guy friends were the ones that took like took their time, except for a few. And then as I was more comfortable with myself, they got more aggressive. I kind of noticed, you know, like, so I tried to look at them and say, all right, are they gonna did I correct my friends immediately when I heard something that was wrong, when I was like in an uncomfortable situation? No, let's just be honest, I didn't. Now I'll do it. And now I've given others the not empowered them, but like said, hey, it's okay to say something's not okay. Hey, I'm not going to be upset with you further than this, but don't do that again. That's just, you know, like be ready to have the conversation if it comes up. And I've talked to some of my straight guy friends about it. So I really appreciate the question. Like, it's okay to say that's not okay. And they've gotten pretty good at it, being like, nope, you don't say that here or anywhere else. Like, what you do in your house is unfortunate for you, but what you do here on this job site, or what you do here in our group of friends, it's not okay if you're going to go down that route. So I think more people need to feel empowered by even us to say we appreciate, and then say, hey, I appreciate you doing that. Like, you know, thank you, Erica. Being human, thank you works in every situation. So
yeah, and I think I love Ray said, be a disruptor, and I think that is so key, right? I mean, the more straight people who advocate, the less folks will be kind of right? Then it's not just the queer people advocating. So the more that we have allies, the more allyship will be kind of a norm. So we have one more question. Jen?
Or one final question. So basically, if your company, you've got a DEI committee, and there's obviously a million intersections that need to be addressed For the LGBTQ community, what are your top priorities that should be addressed in an office environment and policies?
I think number one, it's making that stance that there's zero tolerance for discrimination, hazing, bullying, et cetera, and having top leadership and management speak to that point. It has to come from the top and trickle its way down through its leadership, and leadership tiers need to be checking on their people below to make sure that everybody's following suit.
I think not just, putting up the barrier to people discriminating. I think introducing positive experiences and like just having like a type of activity where, if you have like a bring your own potluck lunch type of thing, celebrate diversity and don't just say, don't discriminate, but, make it possible for people to kind of say hello to each other in a, particular group that they might be shy, to say something because there's not an environment that's like feels comfortable to them. I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Any other kind of top priorities that we should address?
I think that it's important to be able to understand that, our goal is for people to be able to hear you, but it's not to say everyone has to listen and, not say I'm not comfortable with that to no matter what you talk about. Everyone's got their own personal level of comfort, and, some things may be upsetting to them, and it's okay to say, hey, I'd rather not talk about that, and, I think making it comfortable for both to say anything you feel like, but for other people to say, hey, I just personally don't really want to talk about that. It's okay, both sides of that, as long as you do it in a respectful manner and, just treat everyone like people.
Treat everyone like people. I think that's key, right? This whole thing. And as we close it out, thank you all so much for joining me on this panel. I think a big takeaway is if you're not welcome at the table, bring a chair, build your own, and build spaces where other people feel welcome at your table. So